It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Lamborghini. Yes, the auto manufacturer Lamborghini, Italian company, announced that they were going to be going to a 4-day work week for all production workers, or, well, I guess 70% of the 30,000 auto workers there have said, yeah, they're going to go that route because they're giving people the option. And here's the thing. It's going to save people as much as 22 to 31 days of work a year. And it got me thinking that, you know, how much of this was the UAW's doing? How much of this is the fact that the UAW put the 32-hour work week on the table here in the U.S. and that it got such a weird response, even from working people, because a lot of the folks I talked to, they were like, well, how can we possibly do that? Because the thinking was, and then I finally drilled down to it, the thinking was we were going to get a 32-hour work week and you were going to lose a day's pay. The argument is make the same amount of money in 40 hours that you would then be paid the same in 32 hours so that your standard of living doesn't fall, but that you have more home time, more quality family time, that you have time to do whatever else you want. Harkens back to the 8-hour day fight. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what you will. And it's that what you will coming out of the pandemic. I think a lot of working people were like, hey, I'd like some more time to do what I want to do. Spend more quality time with my kids and not be the workaholics of past generations and not sacrifice a standard of living. Because understand, productivity going through the roof. We have created a billionaire class off of our labor. We've created, you know, these big corporations who are wildly, fabulously enriched, massive stock buybacks. And this is one of those things where you're going, hey, look, it's about time that working people share in this. And I look at Lamborghini as the first auto company to actually go and do this. And we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. They say that they're going to be hiring more people. And look, that may be the positive that comes out of this, because as robotics and as AI and as all this stuff comes online, people need jobs, man. And this could open some of those up. Now, across Europe, we're seeing a lot of companies that are trying it, that are moving in this direction, the 4-day work week. And it got me thinking. It got me thinking of, you know, shouldn't be this difficult. We as working people should be demanding better. And I was talking with someone the other day about the 8-hour day, which they don't work the 8-hour day anymore. They think that's a thing of the past. In fact, this very conservative person told me there should be no more work requirement hours. There shouldn't be a 40-hour work week. There should be none of that because we're not doing, this is the argument, we're not doing that heavy manual labor. He said that to a guy who does heavy manual labor. But it's this belief that, you know, we're so much better than the past without understanding that without the push of labor to demand fair treatment, better opportunities, shorter work days, higher pay, we don't get any of those things. And the fact that the UAW put that out there, to me, is a huge deal. And the reality is I think they're doing some really good things on the organizing front and need to, most certainly, without question, need to be doing an awful lot more. And, you know, when I saw this video that they've come out with, and I like the video. I like the video a lot. It's about, you know, who does the work. And I think we need to be thinking in this direction. You know, who does the work? who's the one who makes the profit? So take a look at the video here. I like this.
These hands.
These hands.
These hands.
These hands punch the clock.
These hands work the lines.
These hands build the cars.
And every dollar in profit these companies make
Is made by these hands.
whether at Toyota,
Hyundai,
Mercedes, Volkswagen.
Rivian.
America's auto workers are at a crossroads. When the big three auto companies refuse to share their record profits.
auto workers got to organize.
For over 40 days and nights, auto workers at Ford, GM, and Stellantis held the line and won big.
There's only one question facing America's auto workers now. Who's got next?
These hands don't belong to any company.
they don't belong to GM.
They don't belong to Toyota.
They don't belong to Tesla. These hands belong to an auto worker.
And these hands will determine what happens next.
This is our generation's defining moment.
Either we organize and stand up for ourselves,
Or we keep falling further behind.
Either we fight for a decent standard of living,
Or we sit down and shut up.
As long as we're divided, we're weak.
but united, we can move mountains.
It's time for auto workers from all companies to join together.
from Illinois,
To Alabama,
From Mercedes,
To Toyota.
it's time to stand up.
all of us,
As
United
Auto
Auto
Workers.
workers.
That is an excellent, I got to tell you, that is an excellent messaging video. The reality is, and that's not just auto workers, that can be any industry. We should be talking about this kind of we do the work, we make the profits, we create the products. Working people, the hands of working people, the lives, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the sacrifices of families. We should be talking about this more often, and I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Good messaging, something maybe we need a lot more of. Quick break. When we come back, Erik Loomis is going to be here to share some thoughts on what it took to get the 8-hour day and maybe how we use some of the lessons of the past to move us into the future. Right back after this.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we've been talking about, the UAW put it on the table, the idea of a 32-hour work week. And I got to tell you, I'm kind of surprised at the number of people who kind of lost their minds over, no, we can't possibly, how greedy are they? And it got me thinking, as I said earlier, it got me thinking about, the 8-hour day. How hard was it? How many people fought, bled, died so that we could take for granted the idea of an 8-hour day? And maybe, and this is where my thought is, maybe in 20, 30, 50 years, that's what they'll think about the 32-hour work week. We will see, but here to share some thoughts on what it took to get to that 8-hour day. I've asked our good friend Erik Loomis to come talk with us. He's a professor and a historian, also the author of A History of America in 10 Strikes, the must-read for every working person in this country. Erik, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's walk through this because, I give the UAW credit for putting it out there. I don't believe they ever thought they were going to get a 32-hour work week, but putting it on the table, getting it out there into the conversation, a huge first step. And as I said earlier, we now see Lamborghini going to a 4-day work week. and I see other places, going to be moving in that direction. Do you agree with me that it was a good first step for the UAW to throw this out?
Absolutely. The idea of the 8-hour day was not always the be all and end all, right? Why stop at an 8-hour day? It's true that 8-hour day was a fight, and it took a long, long time. But in truth, American workers mostly won that in the 1930s. But there were lots and lots of workers and lots of unions for really until the 60s that were really thinking that the 8-hour day was just temporary, and that we could fight for a 6-hour day or a 32-hour week or a 30-hour week or some number of hours that would continue to decline as automation grew, as profits rose, as unions got stronger, which they believed was going to happen. Why not take back more time for the American worker? And that kind of disappeared, but you really see that in unions into at the very least the early 60s.
No, and look, it's for me historically, the fact that the UAW put this out, and this is kind of the first time as a country we're having a little bit of a conversation, considering that the 8-hour day was kind of, the first big company to take it on was Ford in 1914. And now look, this fight had been going on since the 1860s and up to that point, and as you said, not till the 30s. But I think it's interesting to see that the reaction that we just couldn't possibly do that. It just seems it seems like history repeating itself.
Well, I think it shows the limited horizons that a lot of people have when they're thinking about the future of work, right? They're thinking about a scenario in which maybe their parents or grandparents, the ways that they saw them working back in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s, and that's as good as it's ever going to get. And so ideas that move beyond that are seen as utopian or just fantastical or completely pointless. And there's no reason to think that, right? I mean, there's always been ideas, and the UAW was especially prominent, particularly left-leaning groups within the UAW, to really in the 40s and 50s to push for continued fights for shorter days. It's not as if American work reached this like peak period where everything was great, and if we only could relive the exact conditions of 1955, everything would be great again. Look, American capitalism is tremendously productive. There is way more productive than it was in the 50s. Why is it that workers should have to labor as many hours as they did 70 years ago to produce massively more profit for the corporations when they're not really receiving any of the benefits of that? Why not think about giving all the automation, all the talk about AI, all the talk about, self-driving vehicles and all the other things that corporations are trying to put on the working class to wrest more profit from them? Why not say, as part of this, if technology is going to continue to advance, we simply work less? Why not? There's no good reason why not. And yet it's just like beyond the possible imagination of people to consider such alternative options as a 30 or 32-hour work week.
Yeah. Now, the reason I wanted to talk to you is because, the history of this is really important. The idea of 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what you will was radical at the time when the average workday was sun up to sundown, 6 days a week, where you basically, in a lot of industries, you basically live to work. It's all you did. And that 8 hour saying, hey, we should have time for ourselves. We should have time to recuperate. And yes, we'll work too. That was radical for the time. And I'm sure corporate America at the time was going, no, we can't possibly do that. Couldn't possibly afford that.
That's right. I mean, the idea of the 8-hour day was considered radical, utopian, impossible, destructive of capitalism, all of these sorts of things. Winning that 8-hour day was a gargantuan victory. But as you point out, it's not as if workers went, that fight was taking workers from a 9-hour day to an 8-hour day, right? It was taking them from a 14-hour day to an 8-hour day. It was taking them from, working 70-hour weeks to working 40-hour weeks. It was taking them from getting no overtime to getting time and a half after 40 hours. All of these things would have been considered utterly ridiculous by the capitalist class, by the newspapers, by the elite commenters in the 1880s when it really gained its big its big initial push in the Knights of Labor. And so, the idea again that that this is as good as it could possibly get, it doesn't make sense, right? Every generation should have the right to rethink its relationship with work. That's happening anyway in a post-pandemic America. And it's just natural that as part of that rethinking our relationship to work, we might think, why not get 40 hours of pay for current pay for 32 hours of work, especially when you look at the sheer productivity of the American worker, which is quite amazing.
No, I mean, I always talk about that graph that's out there, and you've seen it, everyone's seen it. Productivity is going up, from the end of World War II up until the middle 70s, and wages stay right with it. Sometime in the mid to late 70s, productivity continues up at a 45-degree angle, and wages deadline. And not only deadline, they actually recede a little bit to where not only do the corporations get to keep all the productivity gains, they get to claw back some of the wage gains of the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right? Why shouldn't wages match productivity? Why shouldn't work, why shouldn't the hours of work match the level of productivity that you are creating? Right? And these questions, I think the response to this really is a sign of how much we've lost. How much of the radical edge of work we've lost. That the ideas, any idea outside of a very traditional collective bargaining framework is seen as just like crazy town. And that doesn't make any sense, because for the vast majority of American labor history, people have articulated real solutions to problems that might seem radical at a given moment, but then 30 years later, because of the fight people have had, they become mainstream. And everybody forgets how radical those were at one time. And so in coming up with the idea of, say, a 30 or 32-hour work week, we're not even like reinventing a wheel here. We're not creating something that is like impossible. We are actually just reaching back into the pre-existing, relatively recent past of the labor movement to revive ideas that were already there. And in fact, if you go back to the 1970s, and we just revived fairly mainstream ideas from organized labor in the 1970s, we would be accused of all kinds of crazy radicalism, like, a government guaranteed job or something of this nature. It's just that we've lost our radical edge, and we don't actually believe that we can make positive change and that serious ideas to rethink our relationship to work are worth having. And so that's why something that's really not radical, a 6-hour day or a 32-hour work week, these are not radical options. These is just a shift given, that helps match the productivity of the American worker. We're not talking about overthrowing capitalism here. We're talking about simply resetting the conditions of work so that the worker makes approximately what they produce. And there's nothing radical about this at all. It should be part of the mainstream of not only American labor, but of American policymaking.
No, I'm right there with you. I mean, I've got some radical ideas of, technology taxes on automation and robotics as they come on to ensure that when workers are displaced, that they get their wages until they retire or till they pass away. That's a start for me to ensure that this shift, this technological shift, unlike all of the ones of the past, aren't paid for with sacrifices by working people and future generations. This should be one of these moments where the prosperity that's created is actually shared broadly.
Yeah, and those ideas that you say, they were also part of the 1970s American labor movement. In fact, I know of cases where that happened, right? It's just that we have totally lost those conversations. So, even the radical ideas, I mean, there's a history there that's actually the living history within the living history of many, many people in the American labor movement.
So let me ask you then.
We don't have those conversations anymore.
Right. Since you've brought this up as the historian, going forward, because, I've had a lot of people go, well, how are we going to get there? How are we going to accomplish this legislatively? You've got Republicans who I say hate working people. Just look at what they do. How are you going to get them on board? So what is a pathway forward given the experience of the past? How do we take what we've learned in the past and move that into the future?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. You have to actually organize. And I really feel like there's a lot of talk about organizing, but people don't necessarily do it, right? People want a big statement from the president that the president's going to support this, but that's not how change happens, right? Change happens from workers coming together from below, particularly within their unions, to make those demands upon their employers, to go on strike, to negotiate contracts, to win those demands. I mean, look at Lamborghini, right? Just like you're talking about. It's not as if the Italian, premier or prime minister, or I can't remember the exact title, who was pretty awful for workers anyway, came down from Rome and said, hey, Lamborghini, like, you need to do this. No, that's not what happened, right? It needs, just like it maybe with Ford or with GM or these other companies where it happened before it became federal law, you can negotiate that as a union, right? You have to do the hard work of organizing to make your people, whether it's your union or your other community organizations or whatever it is that you are organized with, and the people make this a priority. If the future of American organizing is just demanding that the president give a speech and everything changes, well, nothing's going to actually get done. It takes real organizing from below. Union members have that. So just like the UAW at least brought this up, that's how it's going to change. It's going to be through unions.
And it comes through demands. It comes from working people demanding better and not tolerating lip service. But here's the thing. And I got into a little trouble the other day because I had a guest on and we were talking about the UAW and Sean Fain. And I said, look, I think he's a good leader. I just like I think Sean O'Brien's a good leader, but they're not the ones who did this. It was the members. It was all those people in the streets. It's the people on those picket lines in Toledo and in Michigan that we walked with who knew why they were there, knew what they were fighting for, and weren't going to take a subpar contract. I keep saying, it's not about the person who's given the speech. It's about all the people standing behind them, pushing that person in the right direction.
Well, I mean, look, right? I mean, the election of Fain came from the rank and file. They wanted a different kind of voice leading them. I think Fain himself realizes that, right? And if you, and I think to your, I didn't hear that particular conversation, but to your defense on this, right? I mean, those contracts, as good as they are, they're very, very good contracts. They barely passed, right? There were a large minority of workers for all three of the companies that thought they could get a better deal and wanted a better deal, right? And what that demonstrates, for one thing, is there was plenty more appetite to continue the strike, right? They were not like desperate to settle. They were willing to continue the fight. And I think that is a good sign that they're going to continue to feel that way, right? As they gear up, okay, now you have a contract for the next several years, but as they gear up for the next battle, which is not that far, sure.
Well, I think the next battle, Eric, is organizing the non-union automakers. I think that's the battle. I hope that the workers take that militancy that they took on the picket line and put that energy into ensuring that Volkswagen and Toyota and Nissan and Tesla and all of them are organized so that together the whole industry can make that fight for better wages, hours, conditions.
Well, there's no question that the future of the UAW is really dependent on finally organizing the non-union auto plants. That I completely agree with. I guess what I'm saying just is it was only that, the demands that they did not win with this contract, they could build on for the next contract, right? And that anger and feeling that they're still not getting what their fair share is something that could be articulated going forward. Right. And continue to make those demands. And yes, hopefully by the time that happens, you're talking about a significant increase in UAW membership and overall density in auto, which again, I mean, that's the future of the UAW. Like the UAW cannot rely on a slowly dwindling number of jobs from three companies. And I think that UAW members and the leadership understand this. And, we'll see what happens with this upcoming organizing campaign. But at the very least, there's reason to be more optimistic than we were with previous attempts at organizing.
Without question. And the fact that the 32-hour work week, that they put that on the table will be a big thing in the next contract, I believe. Because, again, robotics and AI, they are here and getting more potent and more powerful. But Eric, I appreciate you taking a little time for us, sharing your expertise and your thoughts. Hope folks will take a look at the book, A History of America in 10 Strikes, written by Erik Loomis. Eric, appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.
Our good friend Erik Loomis. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind. The union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, Eric is spot on right. Nothing given without demands. And the fact that the UAW has put the 32-hour work week on the table is now it's there. It's for us to grab onto and to move forward. And I do find it interesting that, I guess we've been trained in this idea that this is the best we're going to get and that we have to continue to work more and more and more to be able to support our families. Remember, there was a point in this country's history where one income supported a family. One income could buy a house, could buy cars, could put kids through college, could do all those things. We had an economy. We did. We had an economy where working people could work to live, not live to work, had the ability to support a family, one income. Now we need minimum 2. I'm arguing we're at the 3 point now. We need 3 incomes, which is why you're seeing child labor laws across this country, going crazy and losing their minds. And this is why I come back to, we need sound policy, we need good legislation, and we need active, engaged workers to be fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, opportunities, all that stuff. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. For our TV audience, thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time. For those folks listening on our radio affiliates across the country, we're right back after this. Stick around.